Can everybody hear me? I guess Mike's
Christina.
not too important in a room this size. Cool. Well, welcome to, this is called The Edge of Storytelling, Making Visions Real, Next Level of Entertainment.
Isn't every panel called that here?
I think so. So actually, I have a point on that. So my name's Chadwick Turner. Originally, Anthony Borquez was going to be leading this. He had to cancel, but I was asked to fill in last minute. A quick question to the audience so we know how to curate our discussion a little bit so it's successful for you, so you're not just listening to us talk about what we like. Who is interested in VR on a personal level, but it does not affect their career in any way? Very cool. Okay. Okay, good. Who is interested in VR on a professional level? Whether, okay, pretty much everybody. Great. Out of those,
Who is not interested in VR?
both? No. The first one, it's like the rectangle square thing. If you like it professionally, hopefully you like your job. If you don't, LinkedIn's a great resource.
Best VR guy in the world. He hates it.
Okay, so of the professional people, which seems like everybody, how many of you are directly involved with the creative process? So. Okay, great. And how many of you that were involved with the creative process have actually produced immersive content yet? Cool, okay. So it whittled down a little bit, but it's more and more hands when you ask those questions are going up, which is great. Some vocab for everybody that's involved here. Some people might use some acronyms. If you have a question on what that acronym is, raise your hand. I probably will say the word HMD at some point. That's a head-mounted display. That can refer to almost anything. A lot of people refer more like they can use Rift when they mean all of it. So just raise your hand at any point. Let's make this a conversation. Secondly, for the vocab piece, immersive experiences, VR. We can ask the question to the panel in a sec, but some people will use VR interchangeably when they mean 360 video, immersive experiences that allow you to do room-scale walkabouts. There's a debate going on that. There's some people that really say, no, 360 video is not VR. That's fine, but the common nomenclature, it seems with the general population, is virtual reality is everything that we're talking about. So for today, let's all be friendly. Let's not debate that. And let's. You want to debate it? Great. And look, I'm actually in the camp where I agree that if you get specific, there's like, to immerse oneself, you have to walk around and all that. But virtual reality is the parent category that we're going to talk about today.
You already took a stance.
Yeah. I get to make my claim. Yeah, sorry. The other thing I want to just clarify. So this panel, we were joking about Nick, right?
Nick, yes.
Yeah, we were talking about making visions
We weren't
real.
joking about Nick.
Okay, no. This is true. I was, but you weren't.
We'll talk about it in a second, but the edge of...
By the way, this is Chadwick's panel, in case you're wondering.
What's that?
I'm totally joking. Sorry, go ahead.
All right. At the edge of storytelling, I think that what you'll see today is a lot of this is the edge of storytelling with what's distributable and commercially viable today. There's some things that are in research and development labs that allow you to walk around an environment and wear headsets and be Batman or be in Syria and walk around and actually be there and photorealistic, all that crazy stuff, or be president, which for the most part means pretty much anybody can be president these days. So myself, real quick, I went to USC Business Film, worked at Amazon, worked on some of their dark projects, worked on the Fire Phone, built a VR initiative for Fire Phone. Phone didn't take off. Took that experience, built Circle VR, and now I consult with creatives and big companies to help them activate content. So why don't we just go down the panel, introduce yourselves, and maybe explain what you did before VR, and if anybody says they've been in the industry for 30 years, okay. But whatever you did before and how the transition to this industry, maybe what you did before was beneficial or it was a difficult time.
I'm Guido. I'm the head of presence capture at Nokia, so we brought to market the Ozo. In terms of the experience, I've always been in display technologies, mainly in bringing new technologies to market for Intel Capital and Dolby most recently. So right now at Dolby, they're marketing the Dolby Vision with high dynamic range. That was one of the projects done over there. Nokia approached with a secret project, and they say, well, we weren't sure if we want to bring this to market or not. And it was an exciting project. And so I joined them roughly 14 months ago. And since then, I've been spending night and day to make the Ozo happen.
Justin Denton, thing is low. Is this on? Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So I am the technical director at VerseWorks. I've worked with them on projects from Take Flight to the Muse music video experience and a bunch of other ones that haven't come out yet. Before that, I was in previs and visual effects for feature films. And I would say I directly applied to kind of my segue into VR. I actually kind of got away from feature films for a little while because I got tired of the VFX industry. I'm sure there's a couple of other people in here that can relate to that. And from there, I actually went to like Dome and interactive entertainment, dark rides for a couple of years. And I actually realized I had more fun doing the previs for the dark rides in the DK1 about 3 years ago, and decided that I liked VR a hell of a lot more than I liked the whole simulation kind of zone. So I pulled back. I've mostly been involved with 360 video instead of VR. But we've definitely been playing heavily in how you actually integrate the two lately, and I'm sure there's a lot of others that are doing that as well.
My name's Christina Heller. I'm the CEO and co-founder of VR Playhouse. We are a creative studio and full-service production company specializing in VR based in Los Angeles. We founded the company officially in July of 2014, and we did 15 projects last year, most of which were client work. The piece that I think we were most proud of and excited about was a piece called The Surrogate, which premiered at South by Southwest this year and was nominated for an Innovation Award. And it was a combination of 360 video, CGI, and interactive. You had interactive capabilities. Your character lives inside the walls of the house that she used to inhabit, and you can navigate the walls and using your gamepad. And then at the end of each hallway is a portal that you stick your head into, and inside that portal you can see into the room of a house, and it's a 360 video that plays out. And you kind of follow the characters from room to room. So that was a cool piece that we were pretty proud of. And we're excited to do more things. I would say that like kind of combine all of the tools, both storytelling-wise and technically, that we've been developing for the past couple of years. Before this, I was a journalist and documentary filmmaker, and I had been in 2013, I had been starting to think a lot about new media and trying to tell real stories in new ways using like the internet. And I was looking at some really cool stuff that other documentary types had been doing online. And meanwhile, my husband and co-founder, he was a theater maker and had a theater company, and they were also trying to like break out of the traditional model and had been like thrown away the idea of theater with seats, and were doing like site-specific theater pieces like in hotel rooms and things like that. And I think what that meant was we both sort of knew that like change was afoot, and that there was going to be a different way of consuming stories and media, and we weren't really quite sure what that meant. And then when we went to Sundance 2014, we had the chance to try the DK1 at New Frontiers, and it was just like, that moment, like boom. And both of us, we were making tons of money in documentaries and theater people. So, it was really a tough call to make the switch. But so it was like this thing. We like tried on the headset. We were like, shit. He's like, this is kind of a little bit like theater. And I'm like, this is really putting somebody in someone else's shoes in a way that I've always kind of dreamt about in documentary work. And so we were like, all right, let's just change our entire lives, and we did that, and it's been a beautiful couple years of sort of amassing the team that you need to execute these kinds of projects, and we now have that really great team.
My name is Nick. I have a slightly different background, but then again, it's kind of an eclectic mix, so maybe everybody in VR has a slightly different background. I spent the better part of the last 10, 12 years basically making people feel in various different ways. In some cases it was making documentary films, in some cases it was graphic novels, in some cases it was actually making software. So I ran a few venture-funded mobile tech startups, did a lot of stuff with mobile phones, and I've been trying to figure out what the next thing that I was really excited about. And although I spent the better part of, as I said, 10 years thinking about immersive entertainment, interactive entertainment, VR, so some people who think that VR is a fairly new thing, you can see a lot of the enthusiasm in the marketplace, a lot of significant amounts of dollars are being spent on hardware. They don't realize that VR as a concept, the idea of putting you in immersive environments, has been around for a while. It just hasn't really popped, it hasn't really taken off. All of us and many others at this conference are hoping that this is one of those times that actually will take off, because otherwise we're in trouble. But that aside, at some point a couple of months ago, maybe about a year ago, I started advising a few companies in this space, and I sat there on the sidelines thinking, you know, to really do this stuff right, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of 360 video you might have seen. There's a surprising amount of stuff that's kind of shit, given the caliber of people that are involved. And by shit, I mean disappointing. You know, you get the awe from looking around going, oh my God, I'm underwater swimming with dolphins. But after the first 30 seconds, the awe disappears, and there isn't enough repeat viewing. There's not enough, shall we say, for a medium that prides itself on being able to do an extreme amount of emotion very quickly. There's not, there's the repeat viewing aspect isn't, it doesn't bind enough to you in order to be able to get you to come back and use it over and over again. Huh? Then I'll get there. So I started doing a lot of filming, and I started experimenting with how you can do different amounts of storytelling in different ways. And I decided that I needed to get involved in this space. So I started a company called Revolver. We filmed in Haiti, we filmed in Cuba when the Obama administration was there. But we're doing a lot of different stuff with technology as well. We're building different kinds of players. And nothing has come out yet, but you'll be seeing it in the next few months. And that's about it. I'm excited to be involved in figuring out how this medium moves forwards.
Everybody does have a diverse background, and that's one of the amazing things about VR. So, very long time ago, not 30 years, but a very long time ago, I was first exposed to VR with a gentleman by the name of Jaron Lanier. I was up on stage about to deliver to a bunch of database hacks a big speech, and here in the background is this guest of honor, and he says, put these on. And I put on goggles, and I still remember, seared in my image, the color of the room. And he eventually goes on to play an instrument in this presentation to the crowd. This is '92. So VR's been around for a while. We know it's been around, you know, even before that conceptually. That dream stuck with me for a very long time. I'm Daniel Kenyon, founder of Furious M. We're about 18 months old. We are one of the producers on Defrost, which is an episodic series. We like to call it the first one, but it's probably not. We are curating the American Pavilion for VR at Cannes next week. We'll be bringing some projects from Riot. We'll be bringing Invasion, as well as Defrost with us to that. So we think for the first time VR is making a very significant dent in the traditional movie-making television world, and we think that I don't want to see VR become second screen, you know, a promotional tool to say, hey, go watch my big screen movie. I think that for the first time, and you'll hear that from this panel today, we have the ability to change the world of entertainment, of personal experience. So that's my dream, and let's go.
Great. Just following up on Dick's question to the panel, what is the biggest danger in this medium at this point? Is it shit content, lack of funds? What is the thing that's currently being the bottleneck to letting this take off, in your opinion? It seems everybody here is at least involved with the creative process. So.
No headsets. Well, I mean, I think that that's the biggest thing is, you know, there's no money, but that's because there's no headsets.
I mean, quality of content is one. I mean, you want content that people.
Guido, move
sorry.
Closer to the mic.
Sorry. Content that people wanna watch and would pay for it. I mean, right now we're seeing fantastic demos, great experiment, but ultimately, as usual, content is king, and technology doesn't sell on itself, and different groups of people, either it's sport live, either it's great storytelling, horror, different category, but you need to provide content that people want to enjoy, and in volume, meaning, you know, not just one,
yeah,
but multiple titles and so on, because that will trigger the not just trying, but the consuming.
In the live action space, I like to blame the cameras, but in reality, it's definitely a challenge of how you tell a narrative. We've all been trying to apply these like traditional filmmaking techniques to how we tell our story, and we're handing these cameras like this off to directors who are highly respected in traditional storytelling fields, but this is not the way you tell a story in VR. We're definitely finding ways to tell story in VR, and all of us here have met some of those challenges and succeeded in places and failed gloriously in others. And I think that that's something we're going to continue to do as we develop the language. It's kind of like we don't have the complete alphabet yet for how we're telling our stories.
I guess we're going in turn. That's okay. We'll start interrupting in a minute. But yeah, I mean, I think quality content is something that I touched on in my rambling first comment. But yeah, it's quality content is something that is sorely lacking. I will, however, just to just be a tiny bit combative, because it's always fun. I'll take issue with Christina's comment, because here's the thing: there's a lot of us that talk about headsets quite a bit, because you see inordinate amounts of money in the billions of dollars being spent overall between Facebook acquiring Oculus and a company called Magic Leap that you may or may not have heard of. That's technically in the augmented reality space, but frankly, VR in many ways is a speed bump on the way to AR. But the reason I take issue with the comment on headset is, here's the thing. So some of you may or may not realize that 360 video of the kind that many of us on this panel have made and will continue to make is already consumable without a headset on almost every single phone that you have in your pockets, because the YouTube app and the Facebook app both support it, as do, of course, the apps made by Verse and made by a number of other companies. And what's fascinating about that is, I don't know if anybody actually on the panel has stats for this, but I wouldn't be surprised if a significant proportion of 360 video consumption doesn't involve headsets at all. But I would.
That's also because the headsets haven't shipped.
No, I agree. But I actually wouldn't be surprised if, even if they do ship, it'll continue to dominate the way in which people consume it for at least the next year to 2 years.
Probably, but my argument is just that, of course, everyone can view it on their phone. But I don't know about you guys, I didn't fall in love with VR until I put on the Vive. I see 360 video. It's like you said, it's very cool. And I think that once you've fallen in love with VR, then you can do the phone, and you're in it. But it was one of those things where, when I even put on the Gear VR, I think it's cool. Do I put on the Gear VR and think that if I wasn't working in VR, this is something I would do for fun? No. But then it's just not quite there yet. And then, or for the average kind of mainstream consumer, there's definitely people who would do the Gear VR for fun, but Christina Heller, not in VR, wouldn't put on the Gear VR on a random Thursday night for fun. When I put on the Vive, I was like, okay, I would do this for fun, and I think that for me, that's when the headset ship, it's not going to be like everybody in their home has a Vive, but it will start to permeate, and I think, into the mass culture more, because people are going to have that truly transcendent VR moment, and that's when they're going to go, oh, this is not just a movie in 360. This is an entirely consciousness-changing medium.
So the actual real danger to all of us is that people begin to assume that VR is going to happen overnight, and there will be rapid distribution of headsets, that delays in headset shipments are important. They're not. The brands that we think about today are going to come and go, just like PCs did back in the day, laptops, mini computers. The trends for technology follow the same patterns. There's always early adopters, and then better product comes out. So that's not going to be the problem. The problem will be whether the marketplace continues to talk about and preconceive that there's a VR bubble out there that we're going to pop, that the market didn't evolve the way the expectations of the financial analysts have defined it. So it's up to us to continue to promote this extraordinary technology, which is the best way to tell stories out there. So having content, headsets, all of these things coming together in a way that the marketplace perceives as being ready and available. And whether we like Vives over the Gear is not going to be the issue, because someday the Gear will be killer, and the Vive is going to be, you might wear it wherever you go. So we'll see.
So it seems a lot of you are involved with 360 video. Are you currently working with volumetric capture, light field, the O-Toys of the world? So you mentioned Vive, you love your Vive. So where does 360 video fit, and what does it look like 5 years from now when everybody has a Rift or a Vive in their home?
What do you mean? What do you mean?
What does it evolve to? I mean, is it going to be a 360 GoPro rig at concerts, or will it be volumetric where I can walk around?
I think it'll be both. You know, I think that I absolutely think volumetric will evolve to the point where it is user friendly in the next couple of years, and we'll start to. I mean, we're starting to see that, you know, Lytro made their big announcement at NAB, and
Yeah, their VR
I know they're
camera's
big
gonna be
about
the size of this
yeah.
room.
Tank.
It is a tank. It is a tank. It is a
By
tank.
the way,
And so
sorry,
no, it's not going to be.
can we do a quick show of hands of, I know it's an important subject, but how many people understand the difference between 360 video and volumetric capture? So it's pretty much everybody. No, I mean, I ask only because it can get a little subtle when we're jumping between mobile and Vive, but that's okay, no.
But how many people think that 360 is VR?
Please explain volumetric versus 360 VR, or just volumetric?
Yeah, no, it's a good idea.
So Guido, do you want to start by explaining the difference between monoscopic and stereo, and then we can jump from there?
Volumetric is you capture not just the visual data, but the depth data as well, so that when you play back, you are not stuck in one point turning your head like this, but you can wobble as a first step, that is already a big step, or walk. So I can walk, and I'm walking behind and in front. I'm free. So right now we're just one little head, and we can turn around. Fantastic 3D audio and video, but you're still doing this. You can't even do this little wobbling that help us to understand how far are things.
So basically in 360 video, you can only go where the camera has gone, which means if the camera moves, either on a drone or some kind of a remote, you can go there because you can experience that. And yes, you can do this today. You do it with cameras like the Ozo or rigs of GoPros, and you essentially stitch, they call it stitching, you stitch together a sphere of video. So when you're consuming this, it's as though you are the camera, and you can look around any particular direction, but you can only rotate, you can't move. So the experiences that Christina was alluding to that are quote unquote enchanting is when you can actually walk around your space. So you can do positional tracking as well as rotational. That gets very complicated when your camera in 360 video has only captured one position. So the volumetric capture and various other techniques like photogrammetry, all of which you can very much Google to your heart's content, are ways in which you start to bridge this gap. So it could at times feel like a game if it's done badly. In fact, it often uses gaming engines in order to be able to be done efficiently. But it's unusual because suddenly you're unlocking this whole idea of where you can only see where the camera has been before. And by the way, it's much more difficult to do on a mobile device than it is to do at home. As you may have noticed if you've done any demos on the Vive or on the Oculus, there are these external sensors that help the device detect when you're moving and moving up and down or left and right. Yeah, it's a little difficult when you're in the real world with one of these devices. So very clever people in the world are trying to solve this right now. John Carmack's trying to solve this for Oculus. The entire Google Project Tango team is trying to solve this for Google. So it's coming. It's coming. I'm a firm believer that, just to, somebody else mentioned what's going to happen in the future with tethered devices. In fact, I think it was you, Chadwick. I think in the future there aren't going to be any tethered devices at home. I think the home market is nonsense. It feels like it's a big idea right now, but I think that if AR does become what it has a promise to be, which is the removal of all screens everywhere in the world, then it's a mobile product, which means that it's in the home as a subset of it being mobile. And if mobile wins in the way in which the graphs are looking like on non-VR, then basically Oculus and Vive and PlayStation VR are speed bump. But anyway.
If you care about democratization and wide market adoption, mobile VR has the ability to penetrate the world market. And
it already has, in effect. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you know, cardboard, you know, is a very low entry point, if you will. So you know, if you're in the Amazon and you live on a houseboat, you can have a 4G phone and a 5G phone pretty soon out anywhere, and it's pretty easy to get a hold of a cardboard and share with your family and friends, and all of a sudden VR is in everywhere. It's an amazing concept.
We have a question in the front.
Yeah, I just said, you were talking about headset versus just mobile device, and then you just brought up about how much distribution there is of just the mobile device. And for instance, I loved the Star Wars execution on Facebook that I just used my mobile device. I don't know that I would have loved it as much if I had to put on the headset and do all that type of stuff. So from a creative point of view, how much do you look at and how much do you change what your parameters of your project are based on what you think the distribution is? Because Chad said about, oh, in a few years when everybody's got a headset, like, I hope so, but I doubt it. To put it in a different perspective, we talked about film. In most cases, anything that you saw 3D film was shot 2D and then they augmented. Not so easy to do when we're talking about creating a virtual narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I think you absolutely have to be considering that at the pitch phase of those projects, because great VR makes really boring 360 magic window video, in my opinion. I've seen this over and over again where we've had potential clients come in and we're pitching them for their next idea, and we reference one of the projects we did, and they're like, oh yeah, I kind of saw it, it looked okay. And we're like, did you see it in the headset? And they're like, no, I just watched it on my phone. It's like, okay, come here. Let me show you for real. And then they watch it and they're blown away by it. So we have to be very careful about saying, like, even where we're here talking about 360 video, there's a difference between that in the headset, which is the argument of the whole VR concept, versus the, uber consumable version of it that is Facebook. And really, you have to think about that. Either you're going to shoot different versions of those same shots if you want to have the same narrative, or you're going to have to come up with some post methods, because in 360 video on your phone, you can pan, you can move in ways that are extremely violent that you would never do to someone in the headset. So you have to be aware of those things all the way from the pitch phase to the point that you may have two versions that you're actually pitching to do that get released in tandem.
I mean, ultimately, the sense of presence is what make VR different, right? But in order to achieve the sense of presence, you need to feed your brain with a lot of data that is the right data. 360 is just going from rectangle to spheric. That's one step. But it's a big step, in our age group went from black and white to color. So anything that's black and white is an old movie, and color is recent, right? The new generation will look at rectangle movies as old, ancient stuff, because spheric is the minimum requirement. It's just more data, right? But in terms of presence, audio is a huge element as well. If you feed your brain with enough accuracy to the real way you really see, your brain won't spend cycle compensating for the wrong way you're feeling it. 3D is a good example. 3D movies are really wrong. This is not the way we see. And so your brain for half of the time is compensating, is translating, right? As soon as you start feeding the brain with exactly how you see and how you hear, all those cycles now are available. And they're available for emotion, for memories, for really deep sense of presence. That's how the community define it. To the point that if a virtual reality piece is done really well and you consume with the right device, will become one of your memories. You will dream about it. You will remember as part of your life. As strong as that. The 360 video, you will remember that you watch a 360 video. It's a completely different thing.
So studies at Stanford in the Virtual Human Interactive Lab, right, back up what Guido was saying. Precisely, it takes about 5 minutes for you to become fully immersed if it's done well and done right. And at that moment, you kind of forget what's going on in the rest of the world, and you become the individual that you are perceived to be as you are in that environment. And it can be disheartening. It's pretty cool, but...
So with that being said, are you saying that the only real virtual experience we're ever going to have is through the headset?
Not necessarily.
Well, I mean, look, the only what we're chasing here is we're chasing a proxy of real life. So in theory, for real life, and this, by the way, touches on the point Guido made, which is very important. So 360 video, which is something that we keep talking about all the time, is actually comparatively easy in comparison to 360 audio. Because if you think about it, 360 video is kind of dumb in the sense that you got this ball of video and you're looking around in various different directions and you see bits of this sphere from the inside. But 360 audio is kind of complicated because you have, if I turn around and I'm listening to you guys speak over there, I've got the system has got to figure out which way I'm pointing and in real time adjust the sound so that my headphones are down mixed to stereo correctly with the sound coming from the right place, with no lag whatsoever. Well, sub 5 millisecond lag. That's hard. And that's hard. That's very, very hard to do on low-power mobile devices. But the reason why it's important is if you think about yourselves as computers, your particular computer, your brain, sees about, what, 170, maybe 175 degrees, but it hears 360. So your ears are a significantly more important part of making you spatially oriented than your eyes are. What I'm trying to get across is that clearly, an experience like this, where you're at Magic Window moving the phone around or spinning it with your finger, without headphones, you're never going to get a fully immersive experience because the audio is never going to work. So basically, good luck on tricking your brain entirely.
Well, I guess, and that was just my point earlier, was just that you have to fall in love with VR. Then you can go back to the phone, but you have to you have to have that moment. And I know a lot of people who have seen 360 video for the first time on their phone, they're just like, I don't get it. And so I think that the headsets shipping, when they do, is going to be a huge, huge deal for our industry. And, maybe one or two kids in the college dorm, there'll be that one kid on the floor that has the Oculus Rift, but then all of his friends are going to come and try it. So anyway, that was my
and then from there.
Anecdotally speaking, I've now tried this with people over the age of 80. When they put on the headgear, there's no problem with any sensation, but they do tend to interact with the characters almost immediately, 3 to 4 minutes. We've done this repeatedly. So the demographic of 18 to 24 may not be able to suspend disbelief that quickly, but people over 80, 85, 90 years old are actually communicating pretty rapidly here. So there's something going on and I'm not just saying it's the headset. I have a colleague who's working in the pediatric oncology unit over here at Mattel, and they cannot wear headsets for these children that are undergoing 4 to 5 hours of chemotherapy at a time. So he's using pods and doing a projected image, and it's called distraction therapy. And what it does is it's reducing the stress associated with these drastic therapies that they're receiving. So the headset isn't a requirement. It's more about what Nick and everyone else is talking about. It's the ability to get immersed, and whether it's volumetric or not, the more likely you are to have those things done right, the more likely you are to impart your story faster and create.
I will say one thing really quickly, though, which speaks to something that many of you may remember. When the iPhone first came out, the first version of the phone, it had a very crappy camera on it. And in those days, if anyone looked, I happened to look at Flickr, which this was pre-Instagram, pre-Facebook, really big. It was the main way of sharing photos. The overwhelming percentage of cameras and cameras that made the photos that were being shared on Twitter were high-end consumer cameras, or in some cases professional cameras, because professional photographers were sharing their photos. But very soon, the iPhone dominated. Why, if it was a really crappy camera? Well, it's a really interesting lesson learned for VR in general. It dominated because the best camera to use is the one you always have with you, which is the one you have in your pocket. Now, as happens, I'm making a point about VR headsets and about cameras in general. So that camera over there that Guido and his team have developed is an amazing piece of kit. I think it's public information. I think $60,000 is what the cost is. So it's an amazing piece of kit which can capture 360 video in a way that it's first of all stereoscopic, which is a very complicated trick to pull. So your left eye sees different information to the right eye, so you see a sense of depth. However, $60,000 is an expensive toy. Now, there are ways, obviously, you don't have to spend that kind of money to use the camera. You can borrow, rent, etc. But this little camera, which happens to be made by Ryko, it's called a Theta S, costs $360. So it's not impossible to imagine that this little camera will, in the not too distant future, be fused with a smartphone. A smartphone already has a front and a back camera on it anyway. This has a front and a back camera on it that fuses the image together. I guess what I'm trying to say overall is that we're scratching the surface on a lot of different things. We're playing with hardware, we're playing with software, we're playing with editing, we're playing with the visual language and storytelling. But in 6 months, some of the stuff that's being made today will be junk. because you'll just go, oh my God, we've got so much more resolution, we've got so much more depth data. All these, we're killing ourselves to amass these media libraries, but in reality what we're really doing, but don't tell investors, is we're all learning. We're learning. It's all an R&D phase, because we don't know what's going to happen when these headsets hit the market. We don't know if gamers only will use them and 360 video won't work. We don't know if the Lytro magical light filled camera that's the size of 2 of these rooms will suddenly appear and everyone will freak out. All I'm trying to say is that it's a lot of fun, but if you want to play, don't be scared to just dive right in, because literally with toys that cost almost nothing and with Facebook and YouTube allowing your audience to consume it, you don't have to wait. You absolutely don't have to wait, and there are no rules. But that's all. Anyway.
One of the things
wait,
we're
just
doing-
one sec. We have
Go
a
ahead.
question in the front. Go ahead.
Question/comment. Building on Nick's point, audio is always given short shrift, but it's actually more than 50% when you're trying to establish a presence. So on these low-end experiences
51.
like 360 video, the cardboard SDK has been spatial audio enabled since the first of the year. Why aren't we seeing more efforts in this bridging technology between your cell phone and the headsets to have more magic window experiences where you move it around that start off by saying, do not press play until you put your headphones on? Why aren't we emphasizing audio but giving people who already have phones a chance to experience low-level VR so they can release them?
I think that's an excellent point, actually. And honestly, I think maybe we'll do that. I think from now on, I think that's a really, really good point. And, I think part of it was like, for a lot of filmmakers or media makers, like they had to wrap their head around 360 video, and that was a challenge, like especially, and it's definitely the tools are getting easier, but there was a period where it was just like, how do I stitch this thing? So it was like one battle at a time. I think that now we know how to stitch, like the audio part is coming is becoming more into focus, and the tools are becoming more readily available for 360 audio as well. So I'm excited about the new Sennheiser mic and.
Yeah, the truth is we're actually, we conceptualize that, and I'm working with Randall Kleiser, and it's one of the ideas that he had from the beginning. When we deliver the first pilot episode of Defrost out to the marketplace, we have instructions about put your headset on. It's right in the App Store. It says, now you put your headset on. And the key is that you have to engage at that level from an instructional perspective in order to achieve that. Back to your point originally that, headset versus not, this doesn't work in 360 because sound is 51% of the experience. And if you've got a noise in the background or something else that's interfering with that. So we totally agree with that. But we're trying to produce cinematic quality VR episodic narratives. So we're not out there for games and things like that. It's
But to your
more
point, the
important for
tools
us.
are coming available in order to create 360 audio for 2D 360 video that is already one step up in immersive experience, and then of course 3D video and audio. And we are not only in research level, but the camera has eight microphones, so you can capture spatial audio, of course. But if you do a feature like Randall did, of course all the actors have their own microphones, because you don't want to really reproduce what the camera is hearing. You have to mix, your voice, maybe you're telling the story. And so we created now RF tag technology so that the microphone, in addition to the one to the camera, all the actors are spatially positioned. And then you can mix in real time so that, for example, your voice is always 20% above everything else. And when you come closer, it goes up and it goes away. But those are building. If you're shooting something 6 months ago, we didn't have it.
Well, actually, one funny thing that I wanted to mention.
Yeah,
Okay, go
let
ahead.
him.
So what Guido was saying is really important, not to be a panelist, but he's capturing ambient sound spatially, but he's also miking and tracking.
Yeah.
So it's a blend of
Well-
ambience plus the sound that you actually need to have clear. So that you
Yeah.
understand the actor.
So in
But same for 2D production.
It's important in
2D
the
production, they'll put
experience
them-
design. You have to do that from the beginning.
Yeah, spatial mixing is very hard, but I'll tell you a funny story just because it's a real problem, and that's at the most recent Sundance Film Festival. The number of, I don't know, I think Christina, you had a piece in there, and there was a number of very high-profile filmmakers. I think there's a guy in here from Condition One that had a phenomenal piece there about the pig slaughterhouse. And what was fascinating for me is that we're talking about an environment which is deliberately conducive to independent film, which attempts to educate and promote new forms of entertainment. This was Sundance New Frontiers. And the people who were there, who were tasked with demoing these 360 videos to the general audience, it was fascinating because, remember, for sound to work correctly, we need to have our left ear in the place where the left sound is and the right ear in the space where the right sound is. If you put your headphones on backwards, you have a problem because sound that's from the right is appearing in the left and vice versa. And not even think about what happens when something passes across your head. I did a quick straw poll on 2 different occasions when I was at Sundance, and well over, literally like 50-50, half the headsets were on backwards. So I didn't want to be a dick, and I went up to the guys who were doing the demos, and I said, listen, out of curiosity, why did you put the headphones on backwards? I don't expect the consumer to know, right? Because it's brand new, the consumer doesn't realize. And the guy goes, it doesn't make any difference. And I'm like, wait, we're filmmakers, we're killing ourselves to deliver a spatial sound mix, and you don't actually know that it makes a difference. I mean, again, it's not my job to yell at the guy, but it's a fascinating example of how real world collides with creativity and technology, that's all.
Not to give anything away, but in Defrost, we're actually doing a technique that will create this perception that there's a thought inside your head that didn't come from someone else, it came from you. And there's a technique we're using from audio to do that. So I would say 51%, maybe up into 60 in terms of audio. It's extremely important.
We have another question.
Yeah, my question is just, I'm looking at all this from the perspective of a cultural anthropologist, which is my background, and I'm fascinated by VR. I love what it can do in terms of our sensory experience and all of that. But I can't help but feel just like the white elephant in the room to me is how does real world collide with VR? Like, are there control mechanisms in place that the VR content can only be viewed in certain surroundings? That there's, I mean, just the obstruction of the visual sphere seems like such a crazy aspect when we think about social life, when we think about society, and especially if we're taking away all other.
But you can socialize in VR. You're not alone.
Actually, I have a really interesting anecdote from last night about that. So we were at a VR party, because those are things now. We were at a VR party. You know what I'm going to talk about. And our friend put on the headset to view a 10-minute experience, and he sat down in like a little grassy spot. And all of a sudden, these kids at the party were like, oh my God, look at this guy. He's got a VR headset on in a garden. And they all just like started taking pictures of him, like 5 different people taking pictures of him. And we just like jumped in. We were like, guys, what are you doing? And they're like, what? We just think it's a cool picture. We're like, you didn't ask if you could take his picture. There was no consent there. Like, he doesn't know you're taking his picture, and you're taking his picture. Like, there's something weird about that. And so weirdly, like, we were like, this is an important thing that needs to be discussed, because there is there is a vulnerability there about the fact that you are inside the headset. So that's a very interesting point, and I do think we have to have discussions. I mean, maybe it's like see something, say something. I don't know.
There's another aspect to this, and at Sundance there was also a film about someone that had smuggled in one of the little Ricos into a slaughterhouse, and actually had filmed some of the pigs coming to the slaughter point, and it was quite violent, actually. So people that saw it, it affected them a lot, so much that I'm on a panel like this at South by Southwest, and somebody brings this up, and somebody in the audience saw it and started crying, had seen it and started crying from that. So there's 2 aspects to this. One is, what are we doing with VR? Are we, if you make a slasher movie, you bet, this is going to require parental consent, and parents need to understand, and you need to understand what you could be into.
Can you just add to your perspective? There may be a witness of a crime sense of the viewer, and a helplessness not being able to assist, other than putting up the awareness. They're documentary films.
Yeah.
But the VR is so immediate with its impact. Have you addressed this and your own ethics?
Well, in some panels they are talking about, of course, rating is one, but also intensity, because as we were saying earlier, the emotion can be very strong, and so how you consume it can really affect you emotionally in an intensity level that can be very strong. So of course, the right now, I'm not seeing any VR rating yet, but it is unfortunate because a lot of kids are playing with it and they can download, stuff that they're not supposed to watch, and there's no label, anything, either like video games or anything, doesn't matter which one you pick, but that will be required pretty soon.
Personally, we have lots of conversations about this inside VR Playhouse, but I'm pretty committed to the fact that I don't want to make experiences that terrify people. I know that horror is going to be a huge genre, and some people are going to really get off on it because it's so effective, but personally, like, that's cool. No, that's cool. That's cool. I just know that personally, like, for the kinds of experiences that I'm interested in our company kind of making are the kinds that when you take the headset off, you feel freer, happier, like you've more rich for the experience of having been inside the headset. And so that's just the way we're dealing with it. That way I don't have to worry about like any potential negative consequences of the people who view our content in the headset.
Here's one thing I worry about, which touches on the anthropological point, and that's that if we get it right, in other words, if we're able to capture aspects of performance stereoscopically with the right sound correctly mixed so you really feel like you're there, in some ways we're kind of fucked. And what I mean by that is that we could easily create an environment, if we're not careful, where people don't want to go outside. I mean, to some degree, that you can already sense that some people want this, which actually is a whole different kind of scary.
Right. Yeah,
no, I know, it's their choice.
We think
There was a movie in the
this
70s that kept people out of the water.
Yeah.
we think that the social science of this is extremely important, and so much so we're bringing on, the name is a little strange, but we're bringing on a chief science officer, but he's a medical doctor with a neurology background and a filmmaker at the same time, and he's going to become an advisor on a lot of the things we do. We think the science part of this is sort of like the audio part. If you don't pay attention to it, you're ignoring one of the major dimensions of VR.
Question.
Getting back into the whole thing that VR has been referred to from the early days by a bunch of the Vice people as an empathy machine.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
is a very potent tool for allowing people to walk in people's shoes. What I'm curious about is for all of you, whether you have the conversation at some point in discussing what content you make, what message you want to give away, and do you want, and this is something because a bunch of us are working together on writing, I personally would love to be the person that makes a VR piece that you take it off of the end. And the end of the message is, don't forget to go outside, as you were saying.
Yeah.
So what I'm curious about is, do you have those conversations? I guess like almost like a VR ethics subcategory.
Daily.
So
Daily with
how
multiple
can you-
people that create a fantastic project. But I mean, you can have the conversation, but at the same time, in a creative world, you cannot rule what to do or not to do. She doesn't want to do horror. He loves horror. People are, as we speak, porn, no porn, doesn't matter. Right things, wrong thing, it will happen. So it's not like you can say, it's like in cinema, in art, you've seen them all, right?
Right, but there's a finite beginning and an end to a movie. What I'm saying is, if you feel like that's something that you want to consider when you're making a piece or experience.
You should
that
consider.
There's like a moment where you go, you've been sitting here for 3 hours and you haven't eaten, go.
Yeah.
or
Well,
something.
but I mean,
It's
look
like
at the
running a
series right now.
marathon.
They're-
You don't just go sit down
Yeah.
and start drinking whiskey.
Right.
For now, we don't have to worry about that too much because you can't actually consume these things for too long. But it's certainly going forwards, as that's what I was trying to get at. As the technology gets better, we can all conceive of, the prototypical 16-year-old hormonally driven boy who's sitting and consuming porn for 5 hours because it feels so real.
Traffic.
Say again, in traffic, with his self-driving car.
Walking on the street.
Okay. So we can all conceive. Well, maybe we shouldn't conceive of that. Rewind that. Rewind.
There's a question back there.
There'll always be benefits and disadvantages of tech, and I think we'll just as humans have to work on it together and work together to sort of I don't want to say self-police, but you know what I mean, like work together
It
to
will
sort of address
form.
those
I mean, it will
issues.
form. It's like, 20 years ago, nobody was thinking that texting while driving was illegal. It didn't exist. And then we text. Well, first we bought the brick, and we evolved to the cell phone, and then we text, and then we realize, oh, it's not a good thing to do.
Well, flipping the coin on the whole, like, your presence and your responsibility of presence. But one of the things I've found at all of these conferences and festivals and everything else is it's not an ideal way for us to be showing our content anyway. It just happens to be the best platform for us to be doing
That's
it
right.
because of the failure of not having headsets out and things like that. But we're talking about audio and talking about the sense of presence. Well, when you're at Sundance or South by, a lot of the times when you're showing, and even by design of how they set that up, it's so noisy, it's so loud, there's people walking everywhere in front of you. It's like one of the worst ways ever to say, now I'm going to be immersed into something and not care about the world around me. It's an awful way to do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just put mine a little bit more on content, but just to kind of spin this whole science is important and, do we create positive content or, do we be careful of the kind of content we create? I don't know if you guys went to the session around VR as a change agent, but, one of the things I talked about is putting soldiers back into wars, work through that stress syndrome, I think of it right now, but basically like being impacted by that. So I think that we can create content that has an powerful impact and not just entertainment. And we just have to think about, it's important to think about what impact it has. It doesn't just have to have a bad impact.
That's
it doesn't have to just make you,
Absolutely.
afraid or sad or disturbed by the
Yeah.
slaughterhouse. It can also have you help you look through something positive.
Oh, pain. I mean, they use it to, pain, you're entertained and you feel less pain. I mean, those kids, they can go places, they can be an astronaut, and they'll never be an astronaut.
I
mean,
was actually going to say
absolutely.
something like in response to that earlier, which was that, we don't even know how the true VR is going to change people's inner life as humans. So it's possible that like the types of people, like as we're kind of working together to work out our issues, VR will change the way we work out our issues too. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
I
a
mean,
huge impact.
It's magic,
in
magic and
memory.
unicorns.
You think so? Because
I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing.
Because children, because these kids are going to have a chance to experience reality and other people and in other cultures in ways that we could have only imagined when we were.
Think about your
younger.
memories, right? You send a picture or a video of your birthday, right? Best things can happen. You send it to Facebook, to your friends. Everybody look at. You have seen it already. So the best things I can do is, oh, you're so cute, blah blah blah. But in 360, you can send a memory, and I can watch in a way or in an angle that you never watch, and you see Uncle John giving you the finger. Your perception of present will be different about Uncle John, and you never seen that before, and you discovered that because sent the video to me, and I happened to watch at that second at that 27 degrees and so on. So think about that mechanism to tell the story, and then what happened if we all revisit those memories where I'm here, I have no clue what he's doing next to me, right? And then I can go back and now. And that's a real time machine concept. It only works backward, I understand. But it's a huge concept.
How many people have seen? How many people have seen Black Mirror? By the way,
Yeah.
show of hands. If your hand is not up, I strongly encourage you to go check it out. It's available in various different forms, some of which are on BitTorrent. But if you don't abide by those things, then I'm sure you can get them legally as well.
The real white elephant in this room is going to be brand promotion. And when we think about VR, and that's going to become an everyday issue for us. By the end of this year, brand promoted VR is going to outnumber stories something like 1,000 to 1. So we're seeing all of the production dollars, at least right now, going in that direction. And those are going to have the ability to, if your child sees that and they, Good and Plenty or Krispy Kreme donuts are in front of them, they're going to we got to go, and we got to go now, and I got to get this stuff.
But arguably, I mean,
Let's jump to another question.
Okay.
I think to that point, how does the panel see this medium evolving compared to something like online video? Because a lot of the dollars are coming from the brands, and online video has never really materialized as a paid form of content. One of my concerns about the space is it's fantastic. There's so many great opportunities and experiences that can be created, but how, as content creators, as an industry, would we encourage people to pay for it?
So we actually have, our focus is on helping Defrost become a monetizable piece of content. And we have set up our application, and as the project is completed over the next 2 to 3 months, We're going to be running tests on monetization, A/B tests as much as possible. We won't drive it through ad-supported. We will drive it through subscriber-supported, and then different machinations throughout that. So we're going to also work with all the distributors that are out there. We're not going to be competitive with existing distributors. We'll be augmenting and non-exclusive in a sense, but we're going to be testing that model. And it'll be, we're collecting data. We're collecting data at every festival we go to. We have almost 3,300 people have viewed the pilot right now that we have data on, and it's just going to get more. Not yet. Nobody does, as far as we can tell.
When you're collecting data, are you collecting?
Oh yeah, people are in the 99 to 299. Yeah, I'd pay $2.99 for this. And what about $12.99 for all 11 or 12 episodes? Yeah, that is cool. When are they available? So that's the kind of information we're getting. Whether or not they push the button, we don't know.
But I mean, ultimately, it all depends what IP are going to use. I mean, are you using Star Wars? Are you using unknown stuff? And the price point will evolve. Right now on HTC Vive, you can buy, I don't know, 30 or 40 experiences between $3 and $5 and so on.
Charging.
People just, it's happening. But of course, $5 for something that I don't know what it is, and I don't know if I want to watch it, I'm not spending it.
And to clarify, so HTC Vive, I just installed mine in my house, so I've been using other people's demo units. Everything was free, and I installed it at my house going like, oh my God, I can't wait for Tilt Brush. $29.99. Huh. And I had to buy it. Like, I was excited for it. I wanted to paint something, so I bought it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Monetization, great. So I came from mobile games at Amazon and that ecosystem, and everybody's used to free. So the conversation, in my opinion, is transitioning people from the mobile game space of Candy Crush and bringing them to, no, this is marquee content. This is Halo. You spent 60 on Halo. How about you spend 30 on this? You're going to be immersed in this sci-fi epic that's an hour long, like 12 episodes long.
I think we're going to see a mix of like the subscription-based like Spotify idea, especially for the content that is unknown. Yeah. So it's just an all-you-can-eat smorgasbord of crap with a few really nice things mixed in there. And those will rise, and that's fine. And as those rise, people will be more willing to jump onto those platforms. And then for these marquee pieces, I think the way the Steam store is working is already successful in that way. There's just not enough headsets for us to see enough data off of it.
And let's also not forget the freemium model and in-app purchases. I think that that's a really, really powerful tool. I think so you create this incredible world that people are enjoying and maybe interacting, and it's social or something, and maybe and then they can swag out their car in that world, or you can't get into the secret room unless you have the coins, and to get the coins you have to pay for it. So I think that there'll be some interesting opportunities there, and I think what's obviously great about freemium is that it's free, and you get the first time, and then you hook them hopefully with great content.
It's a drug deal model.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. The first time it's free,
drug.
now you got
360 is a gateway
I played
drug.
that cat game, Nico Atsume, and I made an in-app purchase in that game, and it was eye-opening. I was like, this is the first time I've ever paid, but I really wanted the yard expansion. So
we're looking at the series.
What Christina's saying is she's an addict, and there is a self-help group already, which we'll promote later.
I mean, looking at the serial model, which Telltale did a great job of that with the Walking Dead game. They released episode 1. You could play that one free, and so you could play through it, and then all the rest of them, they had you hooked. Then you're like, okay, cool, I'm totally into this. I'll pay whatever you want me to pay for the next episodes. So serialized kind of content, I think, is going to do.
I will say one thing, by the way, that it's a testament to how much of an unusual media inflection point this is. The degree to which the platform is operating separately from the content creators, who are operating separately from the marketers, because everyone's kind of running vaguely in the same direction, but they're not communicating with each other. I'll give you one big example. So Verse, very high-profile content company, created a bunch of phenomenal content. I have their app installed, as do maybe many of you. And when a new piece of content comes out, to anyone who's in the mobile space before, such as, for example, Chadwick or myself, or maybe in the audience, it seems criminal to not inform your existing audience when a new piece of content comes out. Yet Verse, I hate to pick on you, but you're here, so
no, it's fine.
Yet Verse doesn't.
I just started last Wednesday.
So Verse, to use one example, and by the way, everybody in the industry is guilty of this. They don't bother to send out a push notification to their customers that something is new. Why? it's not because they don't care, it's because there's other stuff they care about. So that's what I mean.
That's not entirely true, actually. That's a part of it. There's also, with all of these, like especially with Verse and probably a lot of the content that you guys have had to create, you often have a partner in that content, and they're often hosting it somewhere else as well.
Oh, and they don't want you to send their push
There are
notifications?
lots of, I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there are lots of different types of agreements that you make. Yes.
So audience access is hurdle number one. How do we get it to as many people as we possibly can? It's going to be better if the audience, the viewers, curate this in the end and define VR, as opposed to having a VR industry try to define it upon the consumers. Let the consumers define it. And to that point, maybe 360 video is VR. Maybe viewers will say, hey, this is VR. I don't care that there's binaural sound or not. It's not going to affect me one way or the other. What matters to me is, am I achieving immersion? Am I becoming, am I becoming Joan? That's the character in our project. Do I become Joan? And if so, then it's VR.
That's the biggest question for the future of VR is, am I becoming Joan, right?
Question in the front, then question in the second row.
On that topic, I'm writing for 360 video, and I'm curious, is it more engaging when you are the character, or can you just be a viewer in 360 video and it's still engaging enough for an audience to want to tune in?
I think it's one of these things. It's a lean forward, lean back experience. If you're leaning forward and you're engaged mentally and the science works for you, I think but it's hard to do in 360. I don't think it doesn't work without sound for me. And
I find POV fascinating but limiting at the same time, because the idea of, is it always you, or are you a ghost? Are you able to observe remotely in the way that we're quote unquote used to in a traditional sense? For example, if these three people in the front were having a dialogue scene, they were together in a movie, you might have a wide shot and then a close up on one of them and then another one, then maybe something from behind which shows the speakers and them in context. Can you do that sort of stuff in 360 storytelling? I absolutely think you can. Or are you essentially committing to being one of those people, and then you get their point of view and you can see their hands in front of you? Complicated questions, and one that we're all trying to answer in various different ways, because that happens, editing comes into play in a major way.
Everything comes into play. The experience design from the beginning. If you're not conceptualizing this from a point of view, but more from an observer, then you're not going to have that experience. I think it's harder to do, though, if you're not.
It depends also on the story.
That's
The story is like one step, you can be just watching what is happening, but as a consequence, the next step, you are a character of the story. I mean, it depends on, there's so many
Your story should drive the answer to your own question.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Like,
But it works.
I can't give you the right answer without
If you
reading
use
it.
the camera as a character, so people talk to the character, and then you wear, so of course you're completely involved because they're talking
the
to you,
script
so
and the
it's very
layout
immersive.
play 100% of the role here as well. And there's 200% of things, but
We have
it's
roughly
important.
15 minutes left. Can I just see a show of hands of who has questions, just to make sure we leave enough time? Okay, well, we'll just start with this and see where it leads. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask the panel, whoever would like to respond, regarding binaural sound. There's the binaural headset, the IMAX, the passive headset. Could you please explain what binaural sound is to you in the format of 360, virtual reality, and augmented reality? First, what is binaural to you, with or without the binaural headset definition, and how it applies in your meeting?
So from my perspective, it starts at capture. If you're just sticking mics out there that are not human, ergonomically engineered, then you're not starting there. But some binaural capture mics now actually have ears, human-shaped ears, and then the pickup is inside.
Yeah. I think it means like two ears. I've got two ears, and it tries to, the goal is to mimic real life as much as possible. So when I turn, if I hear something behind me, I turn to look behind me. I think one of the challenges is just making sure that when I look behind me, what was in front of me doesn't completely drop out either. But kind of creating.
Is this including the binaural beat of alternating the waves? Is this what you're referring to?
Could
or
be.
is it separate from the binaural beat?
What is the
In simplistic terms, I think what the word binaural means to pretty much everyone who's creating content, unless they're an audio engineer, it means that you have properly spatialized sound. I understand that there's a subtle difference between binaural and quadraphonic and various different other high-order ambisonics, low-order ambisonics, but at the end of the day, I'm certainly not an audio expert. I've talked to quite a few of them about this, but to literally answer your question of what it means to me personally, is binaural playback and it impacts the way in which you capture and the way in which you mix your entire audio post pipeline. But at the end of the day, it means the ability to be able to, when I rotate, the sound will rotate in the same way it would here. In other words, my ears will correctly be positioned in space.
If I hear a whisper behind me over here, I'm going to do this.
And it's mainly,
and there's an action or marker.
Partially it's with the mix part and mainly with the renderer part. So the software that playback take advantage of the device precision in positioning, and then the software itself has to have data and precision to reproduce the different sounds in a different angle with precision, because we're very precise as human beings. So when he talks, he's not just on my left. I know exactly where he is. So one of the spatial sound playback, not only mixing, element that is critical is precision, because if I only play back so that he sounds on my right, again, the sense of presence, it breaks, because my brain has to compensate for that level of imprecision in playing back.
I want to just quickly say, I think an audio company, a 360 audio company to watch is a group called Echo VR. That's ECCO, Echo VR. They're excellent, and I think that they're really pioneers right now in like making awesome 360 audio.
So, but we're just. Oh yeah, you can go in a sec, but just one sec. I saw a bunch of hands slowly start going up. Can we see one last time who has questions left? Okay, so when you ask your question, if the panel could, one person take the question just so we can get through them all. Your follow-up, and then we'll just start from the front.
Follow-up. So what would the workflow be like? I spent a lot of time in Logic and just conceptualizing what you're describing as a software problem of workflow. Like, do you have any?
So audio mixing, I mean, when you mix, you have to mix it, and you decide that. But then the playback, if the playback is stereo playback, it's not going to work.
In short, look, Google Two Big Ears. They make a tool set, a set of plugins for Pro Tools, which allow you to mix with altitude as well as position in a horizontal plane.
It's a visual GUI, so you'll actually see kind of like where you are as the center of a radar, and then you're affecting where that object-based sound is coming from.
Rotate your head around, and
you can access this through Two Big Ears. You'll be able to see it.
I think we'll have time at the end if you want to come up and ask the question as well. Front row.
Well, I just wanted to say, like, I hope you consider handicapped people because I'm deaf with my right ear, so I would lose all that experience if I cannot just
Good point.
Yeah, it's impactful. My niece is deaf, and so my brother, who's part of our team as well, has tried this on her, and it's a very different experience for her. She doesn't get it in the same
We also need the ability to turn off stereo vision. We need to be able to switch between mono and stereo. There are people that both get stereo headaches or they're stereo blind, and there's no reason for us to be presenting stereo vision.
Next question.
So, Mr. Denton, you might be the one to answer this. Going back to that monetization point, and I've got a background in content creation, product development, and also media. So when you talk about the leveling up, Christina, you brought up, I would pay for that. I've run into problems in my past where I want to add, whether it was PlayStation Home, whether it was in Microsoft PC games, to add sponsored content that people could get for free. So as opposed to paying subscription or anything like that, what goes into, we already know VR production is hard. It's complex. So now if you're then saying, we've published the event, the experience, now we want to go back in to offer that. What do we have to be looking at?
I think just from this perspective, I'll say if you throw in a commercial black right in the middle of that scene and you disrupt that immersive experience, not going to work.
It's augmentation. So if it's a matter of how I want to dress myself or a car or just to level up to get to that next episode, let's say, that's sponsored, that's more accepted by consumers. That I agree.
You mean like a bumper or something like that?
Yeah, just not disruptive, but something that gives them a benefit. But that also requires post-publication production.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a much simpler example, because what you talked about like changing your clothing and things like that gets far more like game engine oriented, which is totally possible actually, and not even that difficult in reality. But there's costs associated with doing it. However, that being said, like let's say you want to go into like a digital billboard type of a situation where that you could replace that even in a 360 video scenario. We do that with ST Maps and Nuke, so we could have it where we could have that hit different markets with different advertising that's completely subversive. It's not in your face, it just happens to be a part of the scene. So that's something you could do today.
As long as it's thought about, because we were trying to deal with Microsoft Gaming, just putting billboards up on a racetrack, it was hard as hell.
So we're going to try it with high-end watches in the beginning.
Yeah.
So let's, we had a question in the back.
Really quick, in reference to lensing and lenses, it seems like right now there's not a lot of real unique development for VR for the lenses, specifically for VR. So where is lensing and lenses in the future? For example, if I'm doing a spherical video or whatever, I've got a certain resolution at a certain distance, but I'm also not capturing something else farther behind it in higher detail. If somebody were wanting to look at that, like the character puts on a pair of binoculars, whatever. So where is lensing going in the future for VR as part of the storytelling process?
Guido, come on.
Yeah, Guido.
You can do it. You know what.
So you're talking
So
about the glass,
well,
right?
there's-
Not the sensor.
Yeah. Well, the lenses is one element. The other are sensors. One of the limitation currently is that the best sensors are rolling shutter, and to synchronize rolling shutter sensors is very challenging. So either you increase the work in post to compensate for those not matching pixels and so on, or you approach as global shutter sensors. But then it becomes another problem in terms of how many you use and how many degrees you capture over each sensor. One thing that is relevant in VR capturing is the pixel per degree. So it's not just the absolute number of the sensor itself, but you can understand that if you use a 4K sensor and you capture 180, or 4K sensor you capture 90, but then you need multiple sensor and multiple cameras. Where it's going right now is just adjusting to really perfect the 3D 360, and then at one point, hopefully, we'll get enough data so that when you want to zoom, like a 45 megapixel picture, you're stretching it with whatever user interface or story you can invent. But those are fundamental limitation. And then the next step is going to be light field capturing, where you capture all those boxes around you and everything, and then you're free to fly around.
So
But we'll need to do another round of fundraising before we do that.
We have time for two more questions. And I think there was one in the far back, and then I'll end with you. Did you still have a question?
I just had a question about how you think that VR, as we know it today, might affect theatrical movie attendance, the theatrical movie experience, because that's the one where
I would say the same way when Blu-ray came out and people thought that cinema will die. It's just going to be there. I mean, everything's going to be there. Yeah.
So I can speak to one example really quickly. It's a theatrical film with a virtual reality theme, where there will be 4 specific scenes that are shot and captured in 360.
Oh, yeah.
You go to the movie, it's an experience, it's 3D, it's on this beautiful screen, but it encourages you, hey, did you like that movie? You should buy the VOD version, because there's these 4 scenes that if you watch it on your headset, you will be fully immersed in.
there, yeah.
So it's tying it back to it. It's an art form. I still go to the Met and look at oil
Wait,
paintings.
which movie is this?
Can't talk about it, but it's
Oh.
so there's there's concepts, right?
Almost
tell you
every
that
major feature is going to have a VR.
Yeah.
We just sign it.
No,
at
it'll be
home.
it'll be
Or
tangential.
actually, there are
Maybe
there
the
are-
lobby.
There are also VR theaters. There's one in the Netherlands where you go there and there are 30 seats and 30 people watching a VR experience. It's the other way around.
We're going to be there next
It's
week.
very sociable experience. You can eat popcorn together while you're both wearing it. So.
Just
Can't
miss.
see anybody else, but it's-
One last question.
We're doing a synchronized presentation. You take them off and you talk.
Just one sec. We have a last question.
regarding music, because I love going to concerts, live concerts, and I did have a VR experience with a concert, and what I was finding was I was getting no body reaction. So, when you go to a concert, just the sound is like an adrenaline rush because it's hitting you physically. And I was just hearing it, and I felt very muffled and a little bit claustrophobic, but I wasn't getting almost that energy that you get physically.
Yeah, we're going to put her in a haptic suit.
Yeah, haptic feedback is
Yeah.
kind of a big thing. So.
Well,
Yeah, no, they are, absolutely. They're putting, like things you put over your body that will allow you to feel vibrations. And
Yeah.
and sometimes it's very cool to be there in person. So.
Yeah, right. This
Yeah.
isn't exactly the same thing, but related to that, and this is just a tiny little detail that I loved in, have any of you played the Vives The Lab game? Okay, so they have an archery game in there, a little mini game. And when you pull the bow, they use the haptic feedback on the controller to make it where you feel the tension in the string that you're pulling. And it's a tiny little thing, but it makes it feel 10 times more real with this one tiny little add-on. So, you know, it's certainly not going to, that's not in your hands, going to give you the feeling of a concert, but I think there's so much more we can do with even what the tools that we have today.
Cool. Well, let's thank our panel. Cool. Thank you.